Yeah, I'd like
A
to
little
call,
harder there, Ken.
call to order the workshop meeting for March 20th, 2024. First thing on the agenda is public comment. Mr. Holt, if you would step forward, please, we would appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate your time. I see again, there's traffic configuration and intersections and things like that on the agenda tonight. And I really think that the council needs to consider some kind of systemic, borough-wide kind of a study that maybe should be incorporated with the streetscape and the comprehensive recreation plan that since they will be pushing impacts throughout the borough, and it just seems kind of, the way this goes right now, it's kind of targeted, and I think it's kind of maybe a little preferential to some people more than others. I come to kind of a lot of these meetings. Sometimes
Can you talk into
they
the
say,
microphone?
this isn't on the
Thank
agenda. This isn't on the agenda, but this is one of the forums where I can come and get most of you. Some of you, like yourself, I see around town from here and there and doing good things, and I appreciate that. But I also have submitted a right-to-know request for two things. One, what is the weapons policy for the public and employees on the borough property? Who can and when and how? Parking lots, buildings, etc. Also, I'm asking for a list of who is officially on the Board of Governors of the Guthrie Library and when those terms expire and how those people are appointed and ratified. They're ratified by the Borough Council. They are a governing body authorized by the council, and that is subject to the Right to Know Act. And I'll leave it at that, and I appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Okay, community media, if you could help me out with people online.
Yeah, those joining us via Zoom, you're able to unmute yourself if you'd like to address council.
Good evening, this is Jennifer Karen. I'm just here for item 1 in conjunction with PFM and PNC for the bond issuance.
Thank you. You good? Okay, number 2 on the agenda. Solicitor?
Thank you. Council met in executive session tonight from 6:30 to 7:05 with its solicitors involving the following items: a police grievance, the alley vacation hearing, and the Guthrie Memorial Library update under Section 708A 1, 4, and 5 of the Sunshine Act.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to item 3, presentation, will be 3A, which is PFM. If you guys could step up, we would appreciate it.
Great. Good evening, everyone. I'm John Fry with PFM Financial Advisors, the financial advisor on the debt issuances for the borough. With me sitting here is Tim Kerr with PNC Capital Markets, who's the borough's bond underwriter. And as previously mentioned, Jen Karen is via Zoom, is from Eckert Siemens, and that's the borough's bond counsel. So the financing team has been working with Mr. Shelton for the last several months, and we're here tonight to present a plan for the financing of your public safety and administration complex. There's no action tonight. We're just showing the plan and the presentation of that. And then next month at your April 24th meeting would be the actual bond ordinance that you would incur and take action on. So hopefully everybody has a copy of the presentation I think Mr. Shelton put in your packet. I know you have a busy agenda here tonight, so we'll try to be brief, but certainly ask any questions of the financing team as we go along here.
We don't have that, sir. No.
No,
I have copies. I can.
no.
Yep.
Do you want
Hold on,
me to make copies?
he has copies.
Sure.
We can show them.
He came prepared.
Unless you have.
We have enough?
You're safe.
Thank you.
Now, I'm still questioning, why do we need it?
Came prepared.
If we have all the
Thank you.
especially with interest
Thank you.
Must have been a Boy Scout.
rates. I was thinking,
Swiss Army knife, my prepared.
it calls them your weapons.
Okay, and again, we're not going to go through every page on here. A lot of it's for backup information, and I'll try to keep this brief. But page 2 is a nice outline of the overall plan. As you know, the borough has, a substantial capital project coming up for the municipal complex, estimated to be about $13.2 million. We've developed a multi-step borrowing plan in conjunction with very good news that the borough has received, that they'll be obtaining a $5.5 million grant called a RACP grant. So the $13.2 million is a total project, but $5.5 million of that will come from this grant program. So it's a multi-step borrowing plan, and the grants are also in a multi-step, so it's kind of in two different steps. There will be a portion of cash that's going to be outlaid by the borough, because these grants, as we describe in item number 2, they're called reimbursable grants, meaning that the funds must be spent by the borough on the project, and then you get recouped later on. So there's some cash outlay, and then you get paid back via the grant. So we'll show you the net amount on the next couple pages of what the actual borrowing would be. Item 3, as the borough has done before when you're doing a bond issue, next month there'll be a maximum parameters bond ordinance at your April 24th meeting. That'll be where we set the parameters for the bond issuance as a maximum par amount, or maximum amount you're going to borrow, and a maximum interest rate. And from there, then, we're able to then go out into the market, find investors that want to buy your bonds, and then we actually issue the exact amount that's needed. But we have an amount that's kind of gives you the maximum amount, so we can go out with the flexibility needed to go get the money when we're ready. On page 3 is the timeline of the financing. So again, tonight, we're here just to present the plan. We've been working for months on this with Mr. Shelton. With your, after this evening, we'll be starting to work on the documentation for the bonds. There's a lot of preparation to go to get the credit rating from Moody's. The borough has a very good credit rating with Moody's, and we'll have to, again, get a credit rating for this bond issuance and get the documentation ready over the next month or so. And then we'll be working with Eckert Siemens and PNC to present then next month that maximum bond ordinance to be officially voted on by the borough. Once that's in place, then the financing team, once we have that vote taken care of, once we have all the documentation ready and the credit rating ready, then we're actually able to go out into the market and lock in interest rates on the bonds and lock in all the payments for this first step of the borrowing plan. That could occur as early as April 30th. It could go early into May. Then you'd have the money for your projects sometime in the June, July timeframe. Okay. I can probably, just page 4 very briefly on interest rates. The municipal bond market, if you look at the bottom of the page over the last year or so, interest rates started to go up in the last quarter of last year. But since around Halloween of 2023, interest rates have come down substantially and remain very attractive and below historical averages. So we feel it's a good time for the borough to be borrowing for this project. And I'll skip to page 6, and then I can wrap up and answer if there's any question. But on page 6 is, I know there's a lot of numbers on here, but it's what we've been working with as a financing team. In the blue is this first step that is going to occur over the next month or so, where we borrow about, probably the borrowing might be close to $8 million. We're trying to net about $7.4 million for your projects. And this would be the only long-term borrowing, so again, page 6, in the blue column. That would then be locked in, this would be the long-term borrowing, and we're estimating the payments to be down there in the blue in column 8. Those would be the estimated annual payments over the next 20 years or so for that $7.5 to $8 million bond issue, again, given approximate interest rates. Then the yellow is really, we'll be back over the next 12 months to talk about the step 2 of this, the 2025. Probably a bank loan will be done in 2025, just for about $4 million or so. That's really just to get the money to be used, then show the people at the state that you have money, and then get reimbursed back by that RACP grant to pay off that. So the numbers in the gold are, in the orange there, that'll be figured out next year, and it'll only be a temporary financing. You'll borrow the money, but then very quickly pay it back once you get the grant from the state. So your net payments will probably be what is in column 14 in the orange after all this, and in column 15, we were working with Mr. Shelton to use some borough cash over the next couple years to help to smooth in the impact on the overall budget, so that the overall budget impact would be more like column 16 on the far right-hand column. About your net debt stays fairly level for the next 20 years or so, with actually not much impact from the total budget standpoint. So I know I went through that pretty briefly, but I know we've been working with this with Mr. Shelton a lot, and I think we're in a good position, and we'd be back here again on April 24th with the official debt ordinance. But happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Can you explain briefly what that wrap means as to the structure? I don't remember what that means.
That's a great question. So your current debt is in the far left-hand
Right.
column 5 of your general fund debt. Very short, it's $730,000, and if you never borrowed again, it'd be paid off in a couple years. And so what we're able to do is in column 6, when we borrow the money, we've structured it so that we're going to, when that other debt falls off, if you will, what we call wrap around it.
Okay.
And so we structure the bonds to have principal payments. When your other debt's dropping off, that's when this will start to kick in,
Thank you.
to try to minimize the impact on the borough.
Thanks.
That's a great question.
I have a question on what happened to the ARPA funds.
We have them. Jim?
So is this for just gap funding? Why are we looking at, if we have the ARPA funds and we have RACP, I'm a little confused as to why we need to take out, what, 30-year, whatever it is.
Well, we got adequate capital for operations, but we
But I mean,
we
it's-
still have those funds. It's in our reserve.
Wasn't this money, the one the ARPA and the RACP get committed to this project?
It's sitting in earmarked for a long-term capital project, correct?
I know we saw it, but I don't remember
Okay.
if we really approved it. I guess we did.
I'll have to get more understanding of this process here.
24 budget, and our 24 budget is not a balanced budget. And so we could talk further about it. We need to get into specifics.
Yeah, I think a few of us might need to have some specifics.
It's in there, but it's not there.
Right. Thank you.
Anything else? We appreciate it.
Very good. All right, thank you. Have a nice night.
Okay. B on the agenda would be York County Planning Commission.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me all right?
Yep.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris Caba, Senior Transportation Planner with the York County Planning Commission, here with Drew Dallum from JMT Engineering. He was the consultant on this analysis. This project is an intersection alternative analysis for the intersection of Eisenhower Drive and Broadway Street in Penn and Hanover Borough. So tonight, what I'm going to go over is just an overview of the location, the conceptual alternatives, some of the issues related to each alternative, and then open it up for questions, comments, anything like that. So over the past 2 years or so, the YCPC has come up with 5 different locations to look at in terms of operations. So queuing, safety, congestion, all those kind of things were on our congestion management process as well as our report on congestion. We went out and got a consultant to do an analysis of all the potential alternatives so that we could program the correct amount of funding. One of those projects, Canal and Bull Road in Dover Township, was placed directly on our transportation improvement program. The other 4, we had to go out and get a bunch of different alternatives, and Eisenhower and Broadway is one of our top congested areas in the county, so it was definitely high up on our list. On page 3 of the handout, kind of goes over the current AM and PM delay as well as our anticipated AM and PM delay as of 2045. That was our horizon year. In the case of no build happening, so nothing happening by 2045. So right now, the intersection as a whole in the AM is operating at a level of C. So there's about a 22.5 second delay per vehicle. The 2023 PM level of service is a C at around 28.6 seconds of delay per vehicle, and then the Saturday level of service is at a C about 31.5 seconds. If we do nothing to this intersection by 2045, we're looking at a 3-second increase in the AM, about a 9-second increase in the PM peak, and then the Saturday level of service will actually drop to a grade of D by 2045 with 43.8 seconds of delay per vehicle at the intersection, and that's all legs combined. We also took a look at safety. So from the data that we were able to compile from January 2017 to December 2021, we had 46 crashes within the study area. At the intersection itself, we had 21 crashes reported. At Broadway and Flickinger, we had 13 crashes reported. And at Maulstown Road and Moul Avenue, we had 7 crashes reported. Eisenhower Drive and George Street had 5 crashes reported. So we have a lot of moving parts here, and one of the things that we did focus on is how each alternative would impact the safety as well as the congestion in the area. You'll see in the next page, alternative 1. The first alternative was a dual northbound left turn lane. So 2 lanes turning left from Broadway onto Eisenhower. With this alternative, we would see increased improvement with safety factors. There would be major northbound queue length reductions. It is the lowest construction cost out of all of the alternatives at $534,000. It has the lowest impact to businesses and minimal environmental impacts. The cons with this alternative is there's only modest improvements to the actual delay for vehicles. So you wouldn't see an impact right away, but by 2045, if this was implemented, you would see a slight benefit by that horizon year. So it would incrementally improve with the 2 left turn lanes going northbound. And during construction, there will also be some temporary disruption to bus route services during construction. We had met with the managers, public works, and the engineers for both Hanover Borough and Penn Township. And out of those discussions previously, we were able to come up with an alternative 1B, which is actually your next page. And it is an inclusion of the dual northbound left turn lanes, but also the inclusion of a westbound through / right turn lane on Eisenhower Maulstown Road. This This, once again, had the increased improvement in safety, the northbound queue length reductions, and was able to move traffic east and west a lot more efficiently. The construction costs only went up approximately $300,000 with the addition of a through and right turn lane on the westbound approach, and then minimal environmental impacts. The biggest downside of this alternative was potential impacts to the Utz parking lot. So with the widening of the road, you would have some takings on the Utz parking lot, but it was minimal at that. So off to the next one. Alternative 2 is actually a 2-lane roundabout. The reason why it is not a single-lane roundabout is because the improvements with a single-lane roundabout were negligible. There were basically no improvements with a single lane. So JMT looked at a 2-lane roundabout, and it was easily the most efficient operationally out of all of the options available. It did improve safety and had, once again, lowest delay during peak and off-peak hours with major queue length reductions on all sides of the intersection. Biggest drawbacks for this, highest construction costs of almost $3 million. Highest impacts to businesses and residential properties, as well as the highest impacts to properties in the Hanover Historic District. So 2-lane roundabout needs a lot of space to operate, and there would be impacts for right-of-way with this alternative. The final alternative that JMT looked at was a quadrant intersection, so essentially adding 2 additional signals, kind of cutting off Flickinger Road and allowing Flickinger Road to go one direction and then connect to Eisenhower via the north section of that George Street alley. There were improvements with this to delay during the 2045 build year. The right-of-way was minimized by using existing roads. It does still have a high construction cost value of $2 million, but the biggest con out of this is it makes the safety worse. Adding extra signals is going to make the safety of all 3 intersections with this proposal worse. There would be potential impacts to agricultural lands as well as impacts to lands with potential contamination concerns based on the environmental review. Lastly, there were 3 alternatives for Flickinger Road itself. We called them sub-alternatives. 2 of the alternatives were cul-de-sacs. So sub-alternative A was a cul-de-sac just north of the structure on Flickinger Road. That is approximately 3,000 feet northwest of the intersection. All properties north of this cul-de-sac would still have access to SR 194 via the Hershey Heights Road, while all properties to the south would still have access via the current Flickinger Road access point. This would eliminate cut-through traffic and limit Flickinger Road to traffic for the few properties that exist in the area. Subalternative B is also another cul-de-sac, just in a different location. So this location for the cul-de-sac is just north of Arise Church, and another cul-de-sac just south of the structure on Flickinger Road, which is approximately 3,000 feet northwest of the intersection. So all properties north of Arise Church would still have access to Broadway, SR 194 via Hershey Heights Road, while all properties south would still have access via the current Flickinger Road access point. And then there is sub-alternative C, which is essentially closing the existing connection of Flickinger Road to 194 and diverting all the traffic to the current driveway that connects opposite George Street. So it's that alleyway. This will likely necessitate acquiring the driveway through right-of-way and making it a public street. although this option would fully eliminate the Flickinger Road intersection itself. There is a summary of impacts in this packet. Alternative 1B is not in here since we did that separate of all the other alternatives. But what I would like to point out with a majority of these alternatives is the required right-of-way area as well as the utility impacts. So if you look at alternative 1, which also includes alternative 1B, we have about 3,000 square feet of required right-of-way area, 4 utility poles and 1 fire hydrant that could be impacted. But if you look at the 2-lane roundabout, it's about 115,000 square feet with 8 displacements, 16 utility poles, 1 fire hydrant. So a big impact to the area. And then the quadrant intersection, 40,000 square feet of right-of-way area and 4 utility poles would be impacted. And like I said, with alternative 1B, we would have to adjust the right-of-way to account for some of UT's parking. The final recommendation, what came out of this analysis and report, so to properly evaluate and compare the traffic impacts of each alternative to each other, the existing condition, delay, and travel time through the entire corridor needed to be compared. These demonstrated that alternative 2, the roundabout, would provide the greatest operational improvements of all the alternatives by reducing delays and travel time. Alternative 1 offers a slight improvement to delay and travel time with 2023 traffic, and as well as some in the horizon year. However, alternative 1B showed a significant reduction in delay and queuing on the westbound approach of Maulstown Road compared to alternative 1, as well as some improvements for the southbound approach of SR 194 Broadway. Summarizing the options studied, the most significant improvements over the existing conditions occur with the roundabout. However, due to the low construction cost of alternative B, as well as the safety improvements and overall impacts to reduce delays, this study and JMT's engineering expertise recommended that the improvements move ahead with alternative 1B. The additional construction costs over alternative 1 is offset by the increased capacity of the added lanes on the northbound and westbound approaches and increased right turn lane capacity on the southbound approach. So I know I went through that, breezed through that rather quickly. You can throw any questions, comments, concerns at me and we can answer whatever you guys have.
I just have one question real quick. You are taking into consideration that there is a large residential development being planned just a little bit north.
Yes, we discussed that with Penn Township as well as Hanover when we held our meeting, and that was accounted for.
Okay.
Did you do cost estimates for the subalternates? Because I honestly think that, I agree with you on 1B, but I think you need to add the subalternate C to it.
Right.
We got to get that Flickinger Road closed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that, I did just have a, kind of an email back and forth with a citizen the other day about Flickinger Road and the access onto UTS. She was having some issues with near misses, so that's definitely something that we want to look at. But did you have any costs for the sold alternatives?
I'm sorry, no, we didn't prepare any cost estimate.
I would think that would be
With
the best
those,
combination.
But I mean, the cost on that should be pretty low. It's, I mean, it's already paved area. It would, a little widening.
Yeah, and what I will add to that, once this project would get programmed onto our transportation improvement program, we would still have to go through the preliminary engineering phase with PennDOT, where we would discuss those options, and that would be added into the whole construction cost.
So when it goes to the CTP or however, it would be a combined project with.
Yeah, it would be one whole project to look at. I mean, we wouldn't want to break it up into two.
Okay.
That would definitely be the hope and something that we would push with PennDOT.
Yeah, because I just think if it keeps being used at that, look as close to the queuing that it's going to be a problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
Chuck, when you're talking about flicking a road, we have a sign up going.
Very true.
east. Yeah, and
But
they're
people
still
don't know how to
trying to
read.
make those left-hand
Right.
turns. And then coming out of flicking a road, there's a jam up of 5 or 6 cars I've seen at a time. And that holds up everything at the light. Nothing can move, okay?
Yeah.
So that's why you're making the statement, eliminate flicking a road,
Right.
correct?
Yeah.
Thank you.
What's the timeline for this project?
Well, right now, we are in the public comment phase, so we're coming out to the borough. We already went out and talked to Penn Township. Right now, with our 2025 through 2028 Transportation Improvement Program, we are kind of capped out in terms of funding. However, we are meeting with our YAMPO Technical Committee and Coordinating Committee next month to discuss all the feedback that we get. Hopefully, we will get these alternatives programmed onto our long-range transportation plan and prioritize it, and then be able to move forward once we have funding looking around 2027 right now. So if we are able to get it programmed onto the tip as one of our highest rated congestion projects, I would hope 2027. If we can get it earlier with some of our other congestion management funds that we have left over, we have a little bit from our carbon reduction fund, which we split with Adams County for the Hanover area, as well as some other lingering line items. We could get we could have one of these intersections that I discussed earlier programmed for preliminary engineering, but it's going to be tough right now until we can get to 2027. I know it's not the best, but we had, so York County, from 2023 tip to the 2025 tip, we have a $100 million US 15 reconstruction project that's taking up over half of our allocated funding. So that's a big one. Even though we saw an increase in funding with the federal bipartisan infrastructure law, it was still, a lot of the money is just going to road maintenance, bridge maintenance, and then that big project right now. So we will continue to push to get our prioritized congestion projects up and moving. I am currently working on a new congestion management process as well as a report on congestion using all of our updated data metrics. And so hopefully with that, we can prioritize locations a little bit easier and get this to move up a little bit quicker.
We'd be very happy if you just moved it up.
I'm trying.
Okay.
But this is the first step. I wish it would be a lot quicker, but getting your feedback right now is the most important thing that we can do to continue moving the project forward.
Thank you.
So I see that we have westbound figured out, eastbound figured out, northbound figured out. What about southbound? I know I use that Broadway all the time. I mean, that traffic is all the way back past the bowling alley, all the way almost back to Planet Fitness. Are with these changes the other ways, is that going to help with that, or? I don't see any revisions to.
I mean, there was,
Southbound.
with that 1B, there was a little bit of additional length on that, the right turn lane
Yeah,
to allow cars to get in there. I think they're being blocked now by a lot of the queuing at the intersection.
and maybe flicking a
So-
road could be part of the problem. I know that's been.
Yeah, and that certainly plays in too. And if that would be closed off, that buys you more
might
space
help.
over there.
Yeah, because it's
So,
bad there.
Yeah, I mean, it can be alleviated to some extent, but I mean, the fact is, there's just a lot of traffic coming to
Yeah,
that
it
one
is.
point, and it's gonna, there's only so much you can do with the current geometry, but it can be improved, yeah.
I just noticed it wasn't actually,
It's,
out of the four, it wasn't the one that wasn't addressed. And I thought, maybe it ought to
yeah,
be.
I'd have to look at I can't remember offhand, but I think there were some improvements there by lengthening that turn lane.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I can get everyone a copy of the report that they did. It's a lot of engineering associated with it, but it does give you detailed trip generation and, you know, the volumes over time and how we would move things through there. And I'm not sure if Hanover is looking at upgrading the intersection, the traffic signal by any chance, or if that was adaptive signals or any of that kind of infrastructure that we could possibly look at for even, you know, short-term viability, but that is something that we can continue to discuss with the borough.
Any other questions or concerns?
It's in a
So who ultimately makes the final decision?
The final decision, what we will do is the MPO board, which is made up of members of York County Planning Commission, PennDOT, municipalities, both township and borough. They will make a recommendation to put this project onto one of our planning documents and move it through our project selection process. So they're actually the final ones, but once it gets on, we need to work with PennDOT to make sure that we have the funding to then program money towards the actual improvement. And as long as there's not something egregious that you see that you absolutely would not want us to look at, we would probably take like the highest cost associated and program a higher amount just so that we have enough wiggle room for preliminary engineering, final design, utilities, all those other components that go into the engineering process. But we have our Yampa Technical Committee April 4th at 9 o'clock. It's virtual. And then about 2-3 weeks later, we have our coordinating committee, and they're the ones that will make the final decision on what happens with this project.
And do they pretty much go by what you recommend?
Most of the time, yes. Yeah, I mean, we do have discussions with the technical committee about the actual design and how the project's going to work, and then the coordinating committee is mostly the funding aspect. You know, how do we get this program? What funds can we use? Should we put it on the long range or 12-year plan? Can we put it on our capital improvements program and show it as an actual project? All of those kinds of decisions. So the public is more than welcome. I know we throw out invites to all the municipalities for our Yampa meetings, so we will be trying to keep in touch as much as we can.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, nice work.
Yeah, thank you, very nice.
And then C on the agenda would be Lepson Research Group.
27, dead till now.
It'll be quicker than you thought.
I know.
Can you hear me all right?
Perfect.
I always ask that when I was in my classrooms. Okay. My name is Dr. Tom Lepson, and I was approached, maybe a real quick thing. We've been in business since the early 1970s, and actually one of the first projects I did was Bank of Hanover. So, but we do work for local companies, regional companies, national companies, and international companies. And I was approached by this organization to take a look at doing a study for the a rental registration program. And to be honest with you, I got very interested in it for two reasons. One was a chance for me to give back to a local community that has been good to me. And when I mean that, I mean South Central Pennsylvania. And the second reason I was interested in it was the gentleman And the people who were responsible for talking with us came to me and said, we're interested in doing this program, but I'm going to tell you right off the bat, we wanted this to be a very objective study. And we want you to also avoid any of the common mistakes that are done with research. And we also will give you as much time as possible. So that was a hard thing for me to walk away from. And so we made an agreement. And so you have given me 10 minutes tonight. And so I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version of 60 pages that I think you've all received in dealing with this. So I'm going to focus on two things. The first one is the research design, and that really is how was the study done, and that's so you would have integrity of the research that was done for you, so you could be confident in that. So what we did do is first thing we take a look at is the sample size, if that happens to be up there. Can you see that over? I don't know. Well, the sample size, and we went out and had a sample of 609 surveys, and there was 537 of them that we accepted. And I can tell you statistically, that's a sample that I certainly can work with and can give me the validity I want with. Okay. The research instrument that we used was developed by our firm and the people here at the municipality, and you had final say over the survey. But you were allowed to give me time to do it, and you were allowed me to go back and forth to get to the right questions that we needed to do to come to the conclusion that we were seeking to come to. The other thing that we talked about here is data analysis. And when we formed data analysis for you, we did two different features. One are called frequencies, and that's just the response to the question that was asked. But we also do things that are called crosstabs. And that's when we start taking a look and see if any special groups feel a certain way about something. And we see if there is a truly statistical relationship. We know, for instance, that people with blonde hair are most likely to have, real blonde hair, are most likely to have blue eyes. So if somebody was standing outside that room and they said they had blonde hair, and you had to tell their eyes, you will always bet blue, and you'll win much more than you'll ever win at Atlantic City or Las Vegas. Right? So that's what we take a look for, and seeing if there's any special groups that happen to be in there. The other things that we did provide you with is at the very end of the report are actual verbatims of people how they stated it. But we coded them for you and color-coded them for you, and also broke them down in categories for you. I will tell you that this study, it just has a wealth of information that can be helpful with this program if you opt to go this way. So if you go up to the next page where it says banners, I'm going to get up to there. When I said to you, we take a look and see if there's any kind of statistical relationship, we took a look at all these banners that you see there, and the owner, residential type, life cycles, gender, age, relationship status, children living at home, number of people residing in their home, and annual household income. These were all questions that were on a survey. So when you see those demographics that are on a survey, they're meaningless until you start taking a look and see what the relationships are to the questions that are asked. And that's what professional researchers do. So the life cycles I also provided for you shows you the different life cycles that we took a look at, and you would all fit in one of those life cycles that happens to be on there. There were 4 groups that we took a look to get feedback from, and that is renters and tenants. And these are the people who do not own property in which they live, but they're residents of the borough. And there's the rental property owners, and they own a property in the borough of in Hanover, which they rent out to another party. And then we have homeowners. These are people who live within the borough. And then we have property managers. And by the way, there weren't that many of those property managers, but we did provide you information with them. And so can I now go to the researcher's observation section? So trying to stay within my 10-minute limitation here, Okay, I'm used to about an hour or two, but we got 10 minutes. So I'm going to give you the Reader's Digest version, and I'm going to focus on two things. I'm going to focus on the key takeaways about how do people feel about the program, and then I'll also talk about how we go about implementing the program, if that's what you want to do. So the very first thing, and the first key question is, were people supportive of this or not supportive of it? And if you take a look at the first table that I put in there, the management table I have made for you, you can see that I roughly have 82.9% of the people who filled out this survey who were supportive of the program. Now, most of the support, or a lot of the support, obviously comes from homeowners and also from people who are renting. Okay? And if I'm being objective about this, if you take a look at the next table, that talks about the people who are renting. But even the group who are renting, if you take a look at it, I have 34.8% of those people who are in favor of this program. Okay? If I flip to the next page, if you take a look at it, okay, what is very unusual here is that you see that there is widespread support. And remember I went through those groups that we said we broke it down by? And this is very unusual. Is Chantel out here with their fiber optics yet? They're doing it in York County. Well, anyway, I'm doing a study for them. And I have just a difference between older people, younger people. There's a real difference between those who make $150,000 and that. Well, I didn't see that here. This is very unusual what I'm taking a look at. So you see, when I talk about age, and we talk about the program, you see how very supportive or somewhat supportive, even at 18 to 24-year-olds are to 85%. I go all the way over 70 years old, it's 79.7%. If I go down a little bit further and have children living at home, which is usually, you have some sort of a variation there. I don't have a variation at all. I have 84 and 87%. And then I have a number of people who are living at home. You can see the same thing, and then usually you will see a variation, but not in this particular case. And when you take a look at the income, you can see that the people who are under $25,000, which by the way, a lot of them will happen to be the renters, are the same as the people who are making $150,000+. So that's a very unusual situation. So not only did you see a high number who are either very supportive or somewhat supportive, but it goes across all demographics and social economic groups. So, there are some concerns that people expressed, and they usually came in two different variables. And one of them happens to be people were worried about money and the fees. And they came this way. They were concerned. They still supported it, but they expressed a concern. And by the way, which means that people took this thing seriously, and quite honestly, they were very mature in the responses that we received in their responses. But they took a look at one being, will the fees to monitor this thing cause increased taxes? And secondly, they were worried about, would the fees be so much that it would be passed on, those who own the properties, would they pass it on to those people who are renting and be a large increase, and therefore they couldn't afford housing? And then the third thing they worried about was, would the study get outside of its scope of being there for safety and for welfare of the people, and get into people's privacy? So there are some concerns that if the program goes forth, that you have to be mindful of and taking a look at when you develop the program. But there is support for it. So if you take a look at the next one, and going forward, okay, it gives you a description of who they think should really be addressed, or what issues should be addressed within this program. And you can see it talks about repeat history of unsafe and unhealthy living conditions that go unaddressed, and a history of violations that go unaddressed. So what we were able to do is really get an opinion of what really should be in the program that makes it a program that's good for all parties: the renter, the person who owns the property, and this was what would be fair. So if I go to the next things we talk about, they talk about what fees would they think they would support, and these are fees for unaddressed code violations and fees for repeated history of code violations. And these were everybody could get their hands around. And then, when we talked about the desired rental property registration features, I think you could take a look at this thing and you can see it ranges in there, but they're all things that are doable and things that give integrity to the program. And so if I go to the next page, I want to talk about communications for a minute. When he talked about communications, and you see this, the people were in favor of two different things, and one of them is the communication programs in which they, when you reach out, once you design the program of going out to the citizenry, the citizens of Hanover, is that they're seeking two different kinds of communications, those which we call formal and those that we call informal. And the formal ones happen to be something like if you use a newsletter or you use your newsletter. The informal ones are like, I call here and ask people some questions, which means that the people who are here have to be trained to answer those questions. So you can see the percentage of people who would seek information and how they would seek that information about the program. Okay. And I think the last thing I got there for you, if you do a approach, that maybe you want to do a more segmentation approach. In other words, I speak to one group one way, I speak to another group another way, rather than having a single message. Did I make 10 minutes? I don't know. I'm used to standing in front of a classroom
You're
and
doing
talking
fine.
for hours, you know, so,
Good job.
of boring people for hours. So. Is there any other questions? I encourage you to read this study. I will tell you, I thought the majority, and I say this was, I have nothing to gain by this, but the majority of the people I work with at the municipality is at a very high level, extremely high level. And they gave me all the support and patience that was needed. Most people, when they get into these things, don't realize how long this takes and what it goes about.
Any other questions from us?
Nope.
We appreciate the amount of work that went into
I have a lot
this.
to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on to number 4 on the agenda, which is the consent agenda. Be looking for a motion to approve.
I'd like to make that motion, please.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Number 5, finance and personnel, PA broadband, Ag. Anybody got to talk to this or no?
Thank you. Good, thanks.
Margie, we good?
Eric, did you, I mean, if anybody has questions, but Eric can explain the basis behind it.
That's all we need.
So I'm sort of filling in a little bit for AJ because he's kind of been running with this. But basically what's happening is there's an opportunity to get grant money for the library. It's a no-match grant, and it's based around broadband access. And it's largely it's COVID money that's come out. It's been funneled into this program. And so we've been busy looking at different things, some of the needs that the library has, looking at some of its broadband facilities, and looking to see if maybe this was a way that we could actually get some money. And when you have a no-match grant, certainly that's attractive. And so what's being asked tonight is largely to allow us to continue to work towards that. And there's some supporting paperwork as far as indicating that council's supportive of us pursuing that grant. So that's sort of it in a nutshell.
So we don't really vote on that.
I'll motion.
Make a second to that motion?
Okay. Okay, we got a motion and a second. All those in, or discussion, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, passes. Thank you. Are you going to talk about this one, number 2, or B?
Amy, if you
Yep.
have questions, she can talk about that. Side letter?
Pretty basic.
Yep, pretty basic. There's a side letter agreement for sick leave carryover. The sick leave was capped And as of the last contract that we negotiated with FSB Blue, there were several people who were over that cap. And so, as we've done in the past, this is just a side letter agreement stating that we're allowing them to, because the cap is put in place after they've already exceeded it, we'll allow them to use the overage amount until the end of their employment, with the understanding that they don't get anything extra when they leave or anything like that, just that they will be permitted to use their balances.
Pretty cut and dry.
Make a motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Outstanding, passes. Thank you. Anything on the pension plan for C?
Nothing more to add than what was in your memo, kind of explaining what the actuary
Right.
recommended for us. So if you have any questions, I can answer
Well,
it. But
I do.
Okay.
I'm not clear on the smoothing and the market value. I read it, but how are you evaluating smoothing?
So what I think of it is like a budget plan that you can do with like your electric, so that the amount that you pay is spread out over 5 years. So it allows us to kind of budget for what we have to pay into the pension, instead of it being volatile with the market. So the market, right now, if the market does well, our pension does well, and so we pay less into the pension. But if the market doesn't do as well, then we have to pay in more. And so it's just easier from a budgeting standpoint for that smoothing, to know that it's a steady amount over 5 years.
Fixed rate.
Yes.
Well, semi-fixed. It's
Well, I get it. Okay, but that makes sense. I just had a hard time putting that word smoothing.
Yep.
Thank you.
Funny word. It should say fixed rate. Easy to
Okay.
write down.
I understand fixed rate.
Looking for a motion?
Motion.
About a second?
Second?
Thank you. Discussion?
Just us.
None? Great. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Thank you. Moving on to public safety. I mean, I'm pretty much going to read A here. Advertisement of proposed traffic ordinance
Makes sense.
to installation of a stop sign on Fame Avenue at the intersection of Moul Avenue. Number 2, elimination of a stop sign on East Walnut Street near Fame Avenue. Number 3, parking restrictions on the 200 block of Eagle Avenue.
So motion.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Pass. This one we might need a little discussion on, just to bring everybody up to speed, but B, Kindig Lane and High Street. I don't know if everybody knows exactly what's going on there.
So, as certainly council is aware, the intersection has been problematic for a very long time. There's always been talk about why isn't there a stoplight there? And there's certainly all kinds of theories about when and who and all of that. But what's bringing it to light now is, so you have UTS is doing a major project right now where they're expanding some of their warehouse facilities. They're rerouting some of the traffic. They're also pooling some of their employee parking from the side of High Street over to the new facility they're building off Kindig. And so there's been some conversation moving with UTS, as well as Conewago Township, and as well as the borough, about how do we maybe look at making that intersection better. You sort of have to then overlay on top of that, there's this overarching conversation about a potential future Eisenhower extension, and what might that do, and how might that alleviate some things. And so all of a sudden you have kind of all these moving pieces. And so what's really happening right now is the proposal is simply to install a temporary traffic light, a light that would be at the Kindig High intersection, would provide for that control of traffic to try and make that a better situation until we can see how all of these other things play out. And so what PennDOT has offered to do is they've offered to provide the light. The borough has been asked if they would participate in the maintenance. Certainly, we're going to reach out to our partners at UTS and say, hey, we would certainly like to partner with you perhaps on this as well, and try to make this a joint project to get a temporary signal put in over there.
Okay, I'll be looking for a motion for that, please.
Just a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Temporary, I mean, is it,
Can it stay there? I mean,
Well, that's a conversation
Or are
that's
we
still
building it
active. I
literally
mean, certainly my first reaction to it was, why is the word temporary even in there? Because
Yeah.
it certainly is needed at this point. But I think the idea, and I kind of have to step back a little bit again, if the Eisenhower extension happens, we know from all the traffic studies and stuff what it tells us that could happen there.
Right.
But I think some of it, you need some real world truthing to actually see. Does it provide the value and some of the savings in time and other things that we think that it will? And if it does, it may necessitate that you don't actually need that there. It may reduce that volume because it pulls those volumes away and they're not coming down, cutting across Kindig to get to that side, to Oxford, to McSherrystown and others. They would have another way around it that's much easier for them, and so it might actually alleviate that volume. So it's temporary in so much as I think they really just kind of want to see, is it going to provide the value if it happens that they think it will? And then the conversation can be maybe, and if it doesn't, should this perhaps be a permanent fixture? Should this be something that maybe the borough looks at and says, long-term, there might be some value to wanting to make this a permanent thing?
so Eric, is this actually a pole and cable system, or is this like what they have at bridges? That
Trailer,
temporary-
It's not, no, it's not one of the trailer type that sits there. It's a cable mounted, so they would probably install utility poles, put a
Okay,
cable
so it's-
across it, hang it. It won't be out on a mast arm. They're not going to be permanent facilities like that. It probably won't be like a permanent controller cabinet, those things. It will be truly a temporary setup with the cables to have the lights facing each of the legs, to operate.
Because
the
there
way
is some
they're supposed to.
logistics there as far as electric. There's going to be some expense there.
Yeah.
And I think enabling us there at Kindig, that is a very bad place to pull out on with all that traffic. And it's
Who
almost like a
evaluates that?
study. We put it in, and then we get the reports back of how well
You
it's doing.
get kind of a real-world study, which you
Right.
can't really beat that. I mean, the computers are good, but you can't beat the real world.
Dr. Rupp?
My question is, who evaluates then, it says it's going to be temporary, it's going to go away, it's going to stay? How's that work?
Well, my guess is what'll happen is certainly PennDOT's going to be looking at their intersections. If the Eisenhower extension continues on its path and it actually goes into, construction and becomes a thing, certainly they're going to look at their numbers
whole- as
anyway.
part of the
This would become part of it. UTS, I have a belief that they're going to watch it because they have a vested interest in watching it because they're going to want to make
They
sure
are.
that,
Oh,
that their employees are safe and that their trucks
Sure.
can get where they need to go and all of that. So there are going to be a lot of set of eyes on it. The borough will probably be monitoring it as well, collaboratively with all of them.
Thanks.
Okay, looking for a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Can I get a second?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, discussion, we just did. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'll be happy.
Passes. C is a PCCD JAG grant submission. Anything you want to add to that, Chief?
Really, we're just looking for a resolution from council to support applying for the grant. Obviously, our body camera system is 8 years old. Its technology has surpassed where we're at. And so to replace everything, upgrade, it's like $157,000. The grant is no matching funds, and the maximum application amount is $250,000, so.
So we're just looking for an approval for the resolution, correct?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Looking for a motion?
You want a motion? You've got it.
Second?
Second?
Okay, discussion, none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Sure.
Okay, number 7, Planning Commission. A, Cherry Tree 5 preliminary land development. Accept an offer to extension until June 26, 2024 for planning approval.
So motion.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Pass. Number 8, Parks and Recreation. Be the YMCA Summer Playground Agreement, which I call the Box Program. I'll be looking for a motion for that.
Motion approved?
Okay, and a second, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. Do we have any reports of council members, committees, or other public bodies? Seeing none. Management report?
Included?
Thank you. Correspondence was in our packet. We move on to number 12, which is additional public comment? Seeing none in the room, you want to help me online, please?
Yeah, if you're joining us via Zoom, second chance to address council if you wish to. You can unmute yourself.
Nothing? Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
Number 13?
Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Yeah.
Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
So they're gonna